This week on Big Red's Cooking, we make a blueberry loaf with streusel topping. Hi and welcome back to Big Red's Cooking. As always, I'm Big Red. So this week, I was digging down my freezer and I realized I had a lot of blueberries down there. And I'm going to guess a lot of you are the same way. We're coming out of winter now. If you've been really good, you've been using your stuff that you've frozen away. But if you're like me, maybe you've got a few things down there that you're tucking away, waiting for that special occasion, and it just never came. We've all sort of been stuck in the house. There's just not as many social events to go to. So a lot of us have turned to baking, but we're not necessarily doing all the baking we may have done in the past. So I thought this was a great opportunity to do a blueberry loaf with a streusel topping. Now I'll talk about this a little bit when we make our video, but I'm going to give you a little background here, a little chef knowledge. Loaves like this are, in kitchen speak, they're what we refer to as quick breads. And a quick bread is really anything where we rise it or leaven it with things like baking soda, baking powders, and whatnot. One of the really common mistakes that most people make with these are that they overmix it. And I'm going to talk about that definitely through the video. And there's different ways of making quick bread. So today we're actually going to do what we refer to as the biscuit method. So this might be a little bit different than some of the other ones you've made in the past, but that's okay. And that's what I'm here to sort of talk you through. So, you know what? That's enough of me talking for now. Why don't we go ahead and jump on over to the workbench and we'll pick it up over there. So what we're going to do, first thing we want is get our pan prepared. There's nothing worse when you're working with baking goods and you don't have your pan ready to go. You guys have seen me, anyone who's watched my videos before, you've heard my love of cast iron. Well, I even got a cast iron bread pan here that I'm going to use. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a bit of a grease. Nothing special about this. Now, here's a little trick for you though. If you want to make sure that you can get it, anything at the bottom of a pan, little paper, my personal preference, parchment paper, right on the bottom. We can get in with a knife and we'll be able to loose around the sides if it sticks up. But it's really difficult to get that bottom piece. So what I like to do is I just take my pan and just use a knife. And we can trace right around. Now, if you don't have perfect cuts, that's okay. I'll fix them up afterwards, like I'm doing here. And now I've got a piece that'll sit right down the very bottom. And I'll have no worries whatsoever about having my loaf come out. And so, sometimes I've seen it happen where you're trying to shake it out and ends up the bottom is stuck, it hasn't properly released. Well, there you go, no worries whatsoever. So we'll just set that to the side for now. Alright, so next what we're going to do is we're going to work on our streusel topping. Now streusel just basically is, fancy word for a crumble. And we're going to get that and we'll have that again set aside. So whenever, a loaf like this in kitchen world is called a quick bread. And anytime we're working with baking powder, which we will be, we're going to want to get that into the oven fairly quickly. And so by having some of these things ready ahead of time, by having our streusel ready to go, by having our pan ready to go, we don't have to worry about our batter sitting around for quite so long. Alright, so I'm going to add about 45 grams of flour. And, you know what? I'm going to use brown sugar. And then we're going to add about 35 grams of brown sugar. And one of the reasons I love my scale is that I can add an ingredient in and then just hit reset. Look at that, perfect amount. we're gonna add some rolled oats, and this is just, these are just minute oats. And we've got about 25 grams of this. There we go. And then last but not least, some butter. Well, I like to look at that. I'm going to increase the amount of butter. I got 50 grams there. Okay, so I say, so we've got our 45 grams of our flour, we've got 35 grams of brown sugar, we've got 25 grams of rolled oats, and we have about 50 grams of butter. And what we're just going to do now is we're just going to sort of cut this together. Now I've got this really nice pie cutter here, and I really like this one, but you don't have something like this, you can just go ahead and use a fork. Basically, we don't want to completely blend this together. We just want to sort of cut our butter up so it's starting to blend through, starting to pull these together. Basically what will happen is that butter will melt into the oven and pull all this together, and it'll make a nice little crumbly top right up on top of our cake, or our loaf for us. So there you go. You can see we got, it's a fairly loose mixture. My butter is chopped down, almost sort of, rolled out size pieces. Okay, so we're just going to set that to the side. I'm just going to wash my hands. Alright, so next we'll do is we'll get our dry ingredients all put together. So we'll actually be doing this one using what we refer to as the biscuit method. So we'll be using solid fat, in this case butter, and we're going to end up cutting this into our blend. Alright, so I'm going to start with 300 grams of flour, and we're going to add 225 grams of sugar, and then we're going to take half teaspoon of cinnamon, to that we'll add 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, what we're going to do is we're going to give this a really good sort of stir together. This is really important whenever we're working with baking powder and our seasonings too, is we want to get that a really good blend together through our flour, because it's going to be really important when we add our liquid in is that we mix it as little as possible. That will give us our nice light and tender loaf. And this way we can make sure that our leavening, which is our baking powder, is equally mixed right through, and we don't end up with any, weird baking stuff. Alright, so we'll put this back on our scale, and we're going to add 200 grams of butter into this. There we go. Just a small amount of. Perfect. So again, we're just going to sort of cut this down through our flour here now. Alright. What we don't want to do is cut our butter right through and turn this into a paste. What we're looking to do is sort of cut it so we get those lovely little pieces. They're almost sort of like little pea size or large rice type pieces. So we're going to go ahead and set that aside for a moment. Done with that. Now we're going to get our liquids ready. So first thing we need is 3/4 of a cup of milk, about 200 milliliters. What am I saying? To that we're going to add 2 eggs. Okay, so I've had some eggshell fall down into my liquid. It's going to be a good opportunity for me to show you a trick. We're just going to move forward. To this, we're now going to add a teaspoon of vanilla. That's all of our liquids. I'm going to take a whisk and I'm going to whisk this all together really well. And like I say, what I want to ultimately do is mix my batter as little as possible so that we get a much more tender product, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So I want to make sure these eggs and this vanilla is really well blended together. So I'm ready to add this to here. I know I got some eggshell in here. You know what? Just run a little sieve like this. Yeah, so running it through there, I can actually see my pieces of shells. Now there's no worries about any eggshell in my batter. So what we want to do now is just pull this together just enough to moisten up that batter. I guess the last thing I should do, seeing how this is a blueberry loaf, let's add our blueberries. So again, the less we mix this, the better. So basically, anytime we're working with flour and liquid, we are going to develop what's known as gluten. The more we mix our batter, the more we mix our flour with our liquid, the more gluten we're going to develop. Well, the more gluten we develop, the chewier and the tougher our product is going to be. So anytime we're making a quick bread like this, the less we mix it, the more tender it's going to be, and the easier it's going to be to rise as well. So if you've ever had any sort of really heavy pancakes or muffins that were really chewy, it's a good chance that you had a product that was overmixed. And there we go. So now we've got our pan that we already greased up, and we put our parchment paper down into. I'm just going to get that little spread around. I can see those pieces of butter where we cut them but didn't fully blend them. If you look carefully, you can see that. And that's exactly what we want. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add our streusel right up over the top here. And we just sprinkle this right on. Give that a little sprinkle around. And of course, I've already got my oven preheated. So we're going to go ahead and pop this right on in. Now it suggests an hour. I'm going to do this for 50 minutes because I'd like to be able to continue cooking it if I need to. but it's very difficult to rewind cooking. So better to always, you know, set your recipe a little bit short. And that way you can double check it and extend it if you need to. So we'll check back in about 50 minutes and we'll see how this loaf is doing. I'm going to get a little bit of cleanup done. Alright, so our timer is going off here now. Let's have a look at this thing and see how it's doing. Let's see, here we go, there's my poker. Close, but I think I'm going to leave it in for about another 5 minutes. So we'll check back in about 5 minutes time. Alright, so I've given this a bunch of extra time here now. And I think we might finally be done. Let's have a look here. Yeah, I think that's going to be done enough. So look at that. Look at that loaf, that looks beautiful. You can see you got that nice crumble top. Let's hope this comes out of this pan as easy as I think it's going to. So you know what? As always, we're going to jump on over to our main counter over here. I'm going to give this a little slice and we'll give this a taste. So doesn't that just look wonderful? Smells so fantastic. You know, let's get this little taste. Love blueberry. And that streusel on top gives a nice little crunch. Adds a little bit extra texture. The loaf itself is super, super tender. So like I said, you know, if you're going to mix this, make these things for yourself. And if, anytime you're making a banana bread or muffins or anything like that, the less you mix it, the better. You just want to get those dry ingredients moist. You know, you don't want to go over mixing, you don't want to go developing too much gluten. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. As always, if you haven't done so already, I ask you to go ahead and hit like and subscribe. Excuse me. Trying to build that, you know, that subscription base, so it'd be nice to see a few extra people there. Please go ahead and share this on your social media. If there's anything you'd love for me to do a video, an idea I had too, you know, if there's a recipe you want me to do a trial run on, I'm more than happy to sample any recipes, give you my perspective onto it, maybe even give you a few tips about how you might change it to make it a little bit better. So go ahead and email that to me. You know, check out my website, bigredscooking.ca. You can drop me messages there, things like that. So, as always, I hope you're enjoying some good food, and I hope I'll see you back here again soon. Bye for now.